This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tells the world Iran lied about its nuclear program.
Tonight I'm here to tell you one thing. Iran lied.
What impact will this have on the Iranian nuclear deal? Plus, to life, CBN's new documentary spotlights how Israeli doctors are saving children's hearts around the world. And Vice President Pence says how important it is to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. President Donald Trump faces a May 12 deadline to certify the Iranian nuclear deal. Ahead of that deadline, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu provided the president a powerful argument to leave the deal when he made a dramatic presentation that showed evidence Iran has maintained a secret nuclear program for years.
Well, tonight I'm here to tell you one thing. Iran lied.
In a well-planned primetime expose, Netanyahu unveiled thousands of files and documents taken straight from Iran's secret atomic archives.
We've known for years that Iran had a secret nuclear weapons program called Project Ahmad. We can now prove that Project Ahmad was a comprehensive program to design, build, and test nuclear weapons.
Netanyahu said the plan sought to put nuclear bombs on ballistic missiles. Then, after signing the nuclear deal in 2015, Iran hid its nuclear files.
Even after the deal, Iran continued to preserve and expand its nuclear weapons know-how for future use. Why would a terrorist regime hide and meticulously catalog its secret nuclear files if not to use them at a later date?
Netanyahu said the U.S. verified the documents, and Israel plans to share the information with France, Germany, and the International Atomic Energy Agency.
So here's the bottom line. Iran continues to lie. Just last week, Zarif said this.
We never wanted to produce a bomb.
Again?
We never wanted to produce a bomb.
Yes, you did. Yes, you do. And the Atomic Archive proves it.
After Netanyahu's presentation, we discussed the Iranian nuclear program with former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Dori Gold. Gold is also the author of The Rise of Nuclear Iran, How Tehran Defies the West. Ambassador Gold, great to be with you on CBN News again.
Likewise.
Prime Minister Netanyahu really, I would say, stunned the world in many ways. What was your reaction to his presentation?
What Prime Minister Netanyahu did was he authenticated our suspicions. Now you have authentic Iranian documents telling us that Iran indeed has been seeking nuclear weapons which they can put on the top of the missile program, on the missiles that they're developing.
The pushback already has been that this is rehashing old information. How would you respond to some of the criticism that's come already?
Even if we knew about the idea of taking the conventional warhead off of a Shahab 3 missile and putting a spherical nuclear device there instead, even if we knew that, we never knew it from basically an Iranian government source. This is something entirely new. You know, it has the stamp of the Iranian state on it. And having that basically allows us to know what we're dealing with.
How would you think is the best way to address the Iranian nuclear deal right now?
Well, I think the whole Iranian nuclear deal has been built on fabrications. And it's better to negotiate after you've established a baseline of truth. Basically, that's what's happening with North Korea. North Korea has been cheating America for years, under the Clinton administration, under the Bush administration, and simply President Trump changed the approach. And we're not there yet, but it looks like he will get closer to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula than any of his predecessors. If he manages to do that, that shows how to negotiate with a rogue state. And I think the lessons of North Korea should be applied to the Iranian case as well.
Do you see that there is any growing conflict right now between Iran and Israel? For example, it's reported that Israel attacked an Iranian facility inside Syria the other day. What do you know about that? And do you think there's a growing sense that Israel and Iran are on a collision course?
Well, Iran is not next door to us. Iran's, what, 1,300 kilometers away, roughly speaking. So Iran, because it wants to attack Israel, wants to bring its forces right up to our borders. Well, how do they do that? They've got to find a country that shares a border with Israel and build bases there and deploy forces there. That is exactly what they're doing at present. And Israel is saying, you know what? We will not allow anyone, or we will specifically not allow Iran to convert Syria into a satellite state with forward Iranian positions right up against the Israeli border. And that's leading to the current relations we have, I should say military relations, where the Iranians are determined to get to the border of Israel and we're determined to keep them away.
Do you see a potential war with Israel and Iran? Or I should say perhaps there's already a hot war going on to a certain extent.
Look, there's two wills here. There's the will of Iran to get to our border, and there's the will of Israel to keep them away from our border. And how this works out, maybe they'll change their minds. Maybe they'll get focused internally. Don't forget, if President Trump cancels the nuclear deal, many in Iran will be very frustrated because the nuclear deal was their ticket back to the world economy. And so I don't know what the consequences of that are in terms of their domestic politics. Many things can change, but they can only change for the better.
Yeah, Prime Minister Netanyahu's presentation reemerged this whole idea of Iran's nuclear facilities. The question for years has been, can Israel attack Iran's nuclear facilities and destroy them? Or would Israel do that? What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts is that we have to have the capacity to defend ourselves against long-range threats. And that's something Israel's been thinking about for a number of years. I remember when Yitzhak Rabin, our former prime minister, was asked, well, why are we doing this deal with the Palestinians? He's saying, well, we're doing a deal with our immediate neighbors so we can deal with the threat from far away. So it's as though Rabin already knew Iran was going to be the big problem. Hopefully, with the capacities we've developed, much of it with the help and cooperation of the United States, we'll be able to deal with whatever they throw at us.
Coming up, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence talks to CBN's David Brody about praying for the peace of Jerusalem. The danger of Iran makes it even more important, many believe, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And that includes U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, who spoke with CBN's David Brody on the National Day of Prayer in the United States.
Mr. Vice President, thanks for doing this, for being here with us. We appreciate it.
You bet, David. Good to have you here on the National Day of Prayer.
Yeah, what a wonderful day. Let me ask you about the National Day of Prayer and this White House initiative, this faith initiative. Explain it a little bit to me exactly. And also, it took a year. I mean, it didn't come out a year ago. Why the delay on that?
Well, I think what the American people have learned in the last 15 months is that people of faith all across this nation have a champion in President Donald Trump. A year ago, he said we were a nation of faith. And he took action last year to make sure that the federal government never imposed on the religious liberty of Americans, like in cases like the Little Sisters of the Poor. But this year, the president signed an executive order in the Rose Garden, David, that establishes a policy initiative within the White House that puts faith really at the center of policy development. You know, virtually every agency has a faith-based office that sees to the impact on communities of all types of faith in this country, of various agency efforts. But this is really about making sure that as we develop policies for the country that we're always making room for those unalienable rights, the free exercise of religion that Americans cherish.
Let me ask you, we have obviously just a few minutes, so Jerusalem, which you can talk about, I know, you can talk about a while. Many Christians praying for the peace of Jerusalem. What about the embassy? Will you or the president go over to the embassy May 14th when it opens in Jerusalem? And what about Netanyahu specifically about what he said the other day about Iran lying about their nuclear weapons program? Do you believe that?
Well, first, the United States has confirmed the authenticity of the materials that Israel obtained that prove that despite what Iran said for years that they had never attempted to develop a nuclear weapon, clearly here are volumes of evidence that prove that Iran was in a headlong rush up into and past the beginning of the 21st century to develop a nuclear weapon. And that is obviously going to color our evaluation of the Iran nuclear deal. The president has a decision to make, but we're grateful for the efforts of our cherished ally Israel in bringing this information before the world during this time. Mm-hmm. But I have to tell you, there's many decisions that President Trump has made since we took office. But I don't know, David, that I've been more proud to see this president do what successive administrations had promised for more than 2 decades, when he recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and announced that we were moving the United States embassy there. Mm-hmm. I know construction is underway. I just saw some good photographs of some of the finishing touches being put on.
Want to see him in person?
And you know, we had the privilege of being in Jerusalem earlier this year. I had the honor of speaking before the Knesset and speaking about that strong bond between the people of the United States and the Jewish state of Israel. We're all finalizing plans about the American delegation. We'll have announcements about that in the days ahead. But when we open the American embassy in Jerusalem, we will, in a very real sense, end this historic fiction. We'll embrace reality, and President Trump and I both believe that in doing that, that peace in the region becomes more possible once we confirm that we stand with Israel, we stand with Jerusalem as her capital, and now we can move on to see if there's a way forward to end years of conflict in the region.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas apologized for his comments at a major Palestinian meeting when he blamed the Jews for the Holocaust. Following his statements, both Israeli and world leaders condemned his views, and some are even calling the Palestinian leader to step down. Abbas's comments came during a meeting of the Palestinian National Council. He said, "The hatred of the Jews is not due to their religion, but rather due to their social role. If so, it's a different issue. Therefore, the Jewish problem that was common in all of the states of Europe against the Jews was not due to their religion, but rather due to their social role that was connected to usury and banks and so forth." Condemnation of Abbas's remarks came from all over. Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust memorial, forcefully condemned Abbas for blaming the Holocaust not on anti-Semitism, but for social behavior of Jews who dealt in loans and banking. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted, "The Palestinian president again recited the most contemptible anti-Semitic canards. Apparently, the Holocaust denier is still a Holocaust denier. I call on the international community to condemn his severe anti-Semitism. The time has come for it to pass from the world." Even the New York Times called for Abbas to step down. In an editorial entitled, "Let Abbas's vile words be his last as Palestinian leader," the paper said, Mr. Abbas's vile speech was a new low, and by succumbing to such dark, corrosive instincts, he showed that it is time for him to leave office. Whether Abbas leaves office remains to be seen. Despite his comments, the Palestinian National Council re-elected Abbas to a new term as chairman of the PLO. Up next, To Life. CBN's new documentary shows how Israeli doctors are saving children, one heart at a time. To commemorate Israel's 70th anniversary, CBN produced a new documentary called To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world. Take a look at how Israeli doctors are saving the lives of children with life-threatening heart conditions and changing hearts along the way.
Every year, thousands of children are born with fatal heart defects. Many live in countries where the life-saving medical care they need simply doesn't exist. Like this 2-year-old girl from Syria. Niyaz was born with a hole between the 2 major arteries in her heart. And without surgery, she will die.
She has a very rare defect. It's very difficult to diagnose, actually. And I think this is why the diagnosis was made so late in life. This is a diagnosis usually made just after birth and should be treated within the first few weeks or few months of life.
Niyaz's condition went undiagnosed because she and her family live in a Syrian refugee camp. Her mother has risked everything to find people who can save her daughter's life. She made the difficult journey through Syria, Iraq, and Jordan, then handed her daughter to the only people who were willing to help her. People she had been told are her enemies.
I was afraid to come to Israel at first, but the most important issue was my daughter's health. It was more important for her to receive the care she needs.
The doctors and nurses who are caring for Niyaz are all Israelis. They work for an organization called Save a Child's Heart, and their mission is to provide free surgery for children with fatal heart conditions. Since 1995, doctors from Save a Child's Heart have operated on more than 4,000 children from 48 developing countries. Children who would otherwise have died.
Well, Save a Child's Heart, the belief is that every child deserves the best medical treatment that we can afford to give. Today, Israel's in a situation that Israeli children get all the medical care that they need in the field of heart problems. And therefore, we consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world. And we talk about reaching out and helping others around the world, then we first of all always look to our neighbors. And when we look around ourselves, we see a Middle East which is troubled, which is in need. And when we look to the south, we see a tremendous need in Africa. Every child deserves the best medical treatment that Save a Child's Heart can give, and it really doesn't matter what religious background the child comes from. That is the motto of Save a Child's Heart: a child is a child.
These surgeons have seen the world's toughest cases, but Niyaz was especially challenging.
When she arrived to us at the age of 1 year and 10 months, she already had damage to the lungs. This makes the surgery even more difficult.
The surgery took several hours, and afterwards, Niyaz needed several days of follow-up care.
What we saw in the echo following surgery is, although she came late, the results were amazing, and she will have a normal life. She can do sports, she can get married and have children, she can go to university first, she can become a doctor, whatever. Her prognosis right now is that of a normal child. She would have died in infancy. Not in adolescence or an adult, she would have died in infancy. We took a child with no prognosis and we turned her into a healthy child. This is what medicine is all about.
Knowing that nobody else would do it and the patient will die if we will not be doing the surgeries, and to see the patients recovering, it's beyond any description.
Niyaz and her mother returned to Syria with a new view of their neighbors to the south.
Now that my daughter has had her surgery, I feel very blessed and at peace. The people here in the hospital and in Israel have been so good to me. When I get home, I will tell everyone how much the Israelis helped us and took care of my daughter.
Coming up, see how not only one Syrian child, but children from around the world are being touched by Israeli doctors when we come back. It's not only one Syrian child, but Save a Child's Heart reaches out to children around the world.
Over the past few years, I would say that one of the very few positive things which have come out of the wars, I would say Iraq and Syria, is the ability of building bridges between nations, of bringing people together, Israelis together with Syrians, with Iraqis, Jordanians and Palestinians, all under the same roof here at Wolfson Medical Center, getting to know each other.
That's just one example of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world. If you'd like a copy of the documentary for family, friends, church, or synagogue, you can go to cbn.com. Well, that's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.